Thanks for staying with us. Welcome to The World Today. I'm Joke Rogers. Here's what's coming up on the program. Search and recovery operations continue in the U.S. following the recovery of black boxes in the deadly D.C. mid-air crash. Rwanda-backed M23 rebels in the Democratic Republic of Congo threaten to continue their offensive in the capital Kinshasa, plus violence in Haiti amid new wave of attacks by armed gangs. Welcome again, everyone. Search and recovery operations continue in Washington, D.C., the United States, after Wednesday's devastating plane crash over the Potomac River. Efforts are underway to recover the bodies of those who died. At least 28 bodies have been pulled out of the river and identified. Investigators have also recovered the flight data recorder and cockpit voice recorder known as Black Box from the American Airlines plane. The recorders will be analyzed at the lab of the National Transportation Safety Board near the site of the crash to get clues about what may have gone wrong with the flight. Officials say multiple factors are being considered in the investigation, as media reports suggest that one air traffic controller was doing the work of two people at the time of the crash. A preliminary report into the crash is expected to be issued in 30 days. 67 people were killed when the American Airlines regional jet and U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter collided mid-air near Washington's Reagan National Airport. Officials in Washington are attempting to salvage the wreckage of both aircraft. Well, the names of the 67 victims killed in the fatal crash are being released, including crew members and passengers on the plane, as well as 2 of the 3 crew on board the U.S. Army helicopter. Many of them have been identified. At least 14 figure skaters were on board the passenger plane, including a pair of 16-year-old skaters, their mothers, and 2 Russian coaches. The sports governing body calls it a horrific tragedy that has cast a shadow across the figure skating world. Those 6 victims were involved with a skating club in Boston. The group was returning from a development camp for young skaters held in connection with the recent U.S. figure skating championships in Wichita, Kansas. The military helicopter was manned by 3 personnel. The identities of 2 of them on board the Black Hawk have been named. Pilot Andrew Eves from Mississippi, the native chief warrant officer 2, and 29-year-old Ryan O'Hara, the crew chief of the Black Hawk helicopter. The Philippine National Police also says one of its officers was traveling on the American Airlines flight. In the meantime, President Donald Trump has paid tribute to both U.S. and Russian victims of the mid-air plane crash. In a press conference on Thursday, President Trump called the incident a real tragedy, requesting a moment of silence for the victims and their families.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I'd like to request a moment of silence for the victims and their families, please. Thank you very much. On behalf of the First Lady, myself, and 340 million Americans, our hearts are shattered alongside yours, and our prayers are with you now and in the days to come. We'll be working very, very diligently in the days to come. We're here for you to wipe away the tears and to offer you our devotion, our love, and our support. There's great support. In moments like this, the differences between Americans fade to nothing compared to the bonds of affection and loyalty that unite us all, both as Americans and even as nations. We are one family, and today we are all heartbroken. We're all searching for answers. That icy Potomac was a cold, cold night, cold water. We're all overcome with the grief for many who have so tragically perished, will no longer be with us.
Well, at the same press conference, President Trump blamed diversity initiatives at the Federal Aviation Administration for the deadly crash without providing evidence. Mr. Trump suggested that the hiring guidance for the FAA's diversity and inclusion program included preferences for those with disabilities involving hearing, vision, missing extremities, partial paralysis, complete paralysis, epilepsy, severe intellectual disability, psychiatric disability, and dwarfism. According to local media, the hiring program has been a long-standing FAA policy, including before, during, and after Mr. Trump's first term.
We have a high standard. We've had a much higher standard than anybody else. And there are things where you have to go by brain power, you have to go by psychological quality. And psychological quality is a very important element of it. These are various very powerful tests that we put to use, and they were terminated by Biden. And Biden went by a standard that's the exact opposite. So we don't know, but we do know that you had two planes at the same level. You had a helicopter and a plane. That shouldn't have happened. And we'll see. We're going to look into that. We're going to see. But certainly for an air traffic controller, we want the brightest, the smartest, the sharpest. We want somebody that's psychologically superior, and that's what we're going to have.
Meanwhile, the president has signed a presidential memorandum on aviation safety, which he says will undo damage done to related federal agencies by the Biden administration. The president signaled out policies meant to promote diversity and inclusion by the Biden White House and of the administrations of other Democrats, saying what they've done is crazy. Signing the memorandum in the Oval Office, Mr. Trump repeated his earlier assertions that federal diversity programs contributed to a helicopter and a regional jet collision near Washington.
All of that damage, that we are assessing how much damage.
We want the most competent people. We don't care what race they are. We want the most competent people, especially in those positions. And you're talking about extremely complex things. And if they don't have a great brain, a great power of the brain, they're not going to be very good at what they do, and bad things will happen. Now, it may or may not have had to do, but I don't like the fact that the helicopter was at the exact same level as the airplane. The helicopter should have been 1,000 feet or 500 feet above it, or something below it. The plane was at 300 to 400 feet, or the plane should have been stopped because the helicopter could have stopped. The plane can't be stopped, but the plane was on a schedule that was, it was along a track. They call it a track. And it's the same track that every other plane's used for many years. It was going down and landing. And the helicopter got in its way. And if the helicopter was higher or lower or stopped, or turning left or turning right at a quicker time. I mean, it turned, but it turned when it was too late. A tragic story. So, I don't know, do you blame it on the air traffic controller too, in addition to the pilots? Maybe the pilot's fault, they should have seen it. I would have thought they should have seen it.
Let's get more on this. Maria Bird, our Channel CV correspondent in Washington, joins us for more. Hello, Maria.
Hello, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So what's the latest at this time as the search and rescue operations continue? And we understand investigations are also ongoing.
Yeah, so at this time, there have been a minimum of 40 bodies recovered. There could be more at this time. They're on a active search and rescue. They stopped yesterday evening and started back again today. Unfortunately, the weather in Washington right now is rainy, so that's going to make it a little bit more difficult. One of the things that was noticed was the fact that some of the individuals that are hard to retrieve are still buckled in their seats in the plane, and so that provides additional challenge with getting them removed from the plane. So they're hoping to be able to recover them as quickly as possible for the families, but it's still an ongoing rescue mission for the remaining 27 individuals.
So we're learning more on the victims of the crash. You just reported an update of at least 40 bodies being recovered earlier. We were reporting 28 pulled out of the Potomac River. What more can you tell us about the identities? We also reported earlier that, about 14 figure skaters were involved, some of them minors.
Yes, this was an extremely tragic event. It has been hit the communities in the local region, specifically in the Northern Virginia region. There appears to be quite a few, as you mentioned, figure skaters that were on their way or had been to a training, a developmental training, and these individuals were Olympic and professional hopefuls. So these young people that were on this plane with their families, so almost half of the plane, at least a third of the plane, was comprised of these families of the figure skaters. We also know there were professional figure skaters, specifically a Russian couple that was on the plane as well. There was a woman from Howard University professor that was on the flight. So there were several very active figures within the community that were on this flight, and that there are outpouring of grief in that regard. And just the sheer number of individuals that we're talking about, 64 on the American Airlines and 3 on the helicopter. That has definitely brought, I think, another level of set of grief for not only the direct families, but those communities. And as you mentioned, these very young people, just seeing that type of tragedies has been overwhelming.
Right, and as investigations continue, I'm wondering what we can expect in the coming days. Some reports suggest, severe shortages, at the those handling, traffic, air traffic, suggesting that, one person was performing the role of 2 people.
Well, I think that's what's going to be continued to be investigated by the federal government and those in the aviation safety committees that are part of the federal government. I'm sure Congress is going to call for a hearing in this regard to find out exactly what each of the responsible parties can provide insight into. But the biggest piece right now is the 2 black boxes have been secured. And so the black boxes will definitely be under investigation. We will likely not hear much about what is heard on those black boxes until the full completed process and processing of those has been completed, and until they're ready to provide an actual formal statement. So, but potentially by early next week, we'll know what those black boxes indicated.
Right, and President Trump seems to, have it all figured out, at least an aspect of it. He seems to be blaming DEI for this crash without supporting any evidence.
Yes. So obviously the president is very concerned about this as it relates to how this occurred, and most importantly, the how, I think, is really where his administration is focusing on, because obviously wanting to ensure that this does not happen again. So I think that's really where we're going to see his focus is pushing forward with information on the how this could have occurred.
And how are Americans reacting to this? For some of those that have been identified, especially the figure skaters and their families, I'm hearing it's a dark cloud over the figure skating world. That's just one group of people that are mourning. The military is also mourning the loss of its men, and the academic world, the loss of the professor that you just mentioned, and what have you. So how are Americans reacting to all of this?
Americans are stricken with grief. I think the Americans are definitely realizing the impact of this. When you talk about there were no survivors, I think that is hard to imagine. I think that people are very concerned, and they are looking for answers as it relates to how this could occur, and answers really around aviation safety as a whole and in the U.S. So at this time, Americans are trying to be supportive, especially in the Washington, D.C. area, because it does hit home to many families just due to the sheer number of individuals. And as you mentioned, the figure skating community, professors, and most of these individuals were very impactful in their local communities.
And we understand that it's still terrible weather, very cold. Some of the search and rescue operators are working, in icy conditions on the river itself. How difficult has this been?
This has been extremely difficult. There have been fire and emergency management individuals from all across this area, not only in Washington, D.C., but Maryland and Virginia have provided resources as well. They have been working 17 hours oftentimes straight, and the diving conditions are just challenging, as you stated, because of the frigid temperatures. Now, the temperatures have gotten a little bit better over the last few weeks, but what the challenge is that these waters have been so cold for so long that even though the temperature has gotten a little bit better, very deep down underneath the sea, the ocean areas, there is still quite a bit of very frigid temperatures there. So that's, I think, where they're finding the greatest challenge, because most of the remains have sinked to the bottom of that river right there on the Potomac.
Maria, thanks. Let's move on to other stories in India. Families of people who were also killed in a crash at a major religious festival in the northern region this week are grieving their loss and waiting to take bodies of their relatives back home. At least 30 people died in the crash at the Kumbh Mela festival on Wednesday, which was one of the holiest days of the 6-week-long Hindu festival. The incident took place in Prayagraj city near the Sangam, an auspicious meeting point of the sacred Ganges, Yamuna and mythical Saraswati rivers, where devotees take a dip. The festival, billed as the largest gathering of humanity, attracts tens of millions of pilgrims from around the world. The crash reportedly took place after a surge of pilgrims making their way to the river trampled over devotees sleeping near the riverbank. Eyewitnesses have blamed the police and festival authorities for poor crowd control measures and not making adequate space for pilgrims to move to their destinations. Rwanda is illegally occupying the Democratic Republic of Congo and attempting to orchestrate regime change, and this according to the country's foreign minister Therese Wagner, who says this followed decades of impunity and failure to hold Rwandan President Paul Kagame accountable for violating international law. Her comments come after Rwanda-backed M23 rebels captured the eastern Congolese city of Goma and threatened to continue their offensive to the capital, Kinshasa. However, Rwanda's government spokeswoman, Yolande Makolo, has denied the accusation and said its troops were deployed to prevent the conflict spilling over to its territory. The rebels say they want to take their fight to the far-off capital, Kinshasa, as Congo's president called for a massive military mobilization to resist the rebellion, and his defense minister rejected calls for talks. Meanwhile, it has been a humiliating week for nearly 300 Romanian mercenaries recruited to fight on the side of the army in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Their surrender following a rebel assault on the eastern city of Goma has also shattered the dreams of those who signed up for the job to earn big money. The hired soldiers were being paid around $5,000 a month, while regular military recruits get around $100 or sometimes go unpaid. The Romanians were contracted to help the army fight the Rwanda-backed M23 rebels, who say they are fighting to protect the rights of DR Congo's minority ethnic Tutsis. When the offensive on Goma started on Sunday night, the Romanians were forced to take refuge at a UN peacekeeping base.
For the company for this private company for a long time, like 13 years, okay, and there was another project, like, as I said, trainers, and training the National Army, the DRC National Army.
To fight against their own people, right?
To fight, not against their own people. To fight. That was when M23 approaching Goma, okay, we seek protection of UN in Goma. That's why, and they give it to us as a non-combatant. That's why I end up here with you, sir. As far as I know, the Romanian government, okay, my country, make a request to the Rwanda government to be here and to facilitate what they facilitate already.
How did we end up in the hands of M23? Because M23 came in Goma, were established in Goma. So once the M23 arrived at Goma, we sought refugee at the UN base. We are instructors. Our contract is written black on white that we are instructors. We are not engaging anyone. We are not supporting besides the instruction. And we're not engaging, we weren't there to fight. Our mandate, our contract wasn't about fighting, was about instruction.
Like we've mentioned earlier, the M23 group of rebels in DRC have vowed to take their offensive all the way to the capital, Kinshasa. One of the leaders, speaking at a briefing in Goma on Thursday, added that they were open to dialogue with the government as part of their plans to gain political power in the Democratic Republic of Congo. There are unconfirmed reports that the M23 rebels are currently advancing towards Bukavu, the second biggest city in the region, despite international calls for a ceasefire.
I did not say how.
Our objective is Congo. We are fighting for Congo. We are not fighting for mineral. We are not fighting for anything. And what you say, balkanization, is not a word that deserve to be noted in our struggle. Our struggle is, we are struggling today for three main reasons. The first reason is just that there is not a state in DRC. Tshisekedi regime has destroyed the army, has destroyed the national police, he has destroyed the administration, and above all, he has destroyed justice. I will encourage him to continue fighting, but we are going to fight him until we get to Kinshasa.
Well, the United Nations, however, is saying there are credible reports that the M23 is moving rapidly towards the city of Bukavu. UN spokesperson says the situation in the DRC and in South Kivu particularly remains very volatile. Addressing the press, the spokesperson for the UN Secretary General said the UN is deeply concerned, especially about the humanitarian and security risks.
We are deeply concerned by the situation in South Kivu particularly, which remains very volatile, with credible reports that the M23 is moving rapidly towards the city of Bukavu. In addition, our colleagues in the peacekeeping mission say that there are reports of Rwandan defense forces cross-border movements in that direction. Clashes are continuing to be reported between the M23 and the Congolese armed forces and allied forces south of Minova in South Kivu. As a reminder, peacekeepers withdrew from South Kivu province in June of last year. Today, our colleagues are also concerned about humanitarian security risks, particularly interethnic conflict in the absence of UN peacekeeping forces in that area. In Goma, which is in North Kivu province, the situation remains tense and volatile, with occasional shooting continuing within the city. Water and electricity have been off for almost a week, and unexploded ordnance remains a serious obstacle to freedom of movement of people, humanitarians, and peacekeepers. The mission was able, however, to take a few reconnaissance patrols yesterday within the city to begin the process of assessing damage, and number of peacekeeping positions were able to be resupplied.
In the meantime, a regional spokesperson for the International Committee of the Red Cross in Africa, Aliona Sinenko, is highlighting the high cost to civilians of the DRC crisis. The Red Cross representative noted that in addition to the huge number of wounded and the lack of hospital beds, medical supplies had been looted in Goma. She further warned of ICRC's shrinking capacity to help civilians in need.
In the eastern DRC.
Our main concerns, which are the escalating fighting in and around Goma, and also the use of the heavy artillery and explosive weapons, and the devastating toll on civilians that this has produced. And there is an influx of wounded that we have received in the Ndosha hospital that we support, and our surgical team has been working 24/7 to respond to this. Now, the fighting in the heavily populated area that creates incredible humanitarian situation, the loss of civilian life, but also there are a lot of dangers that are related to the attacks on essential civilian infrastructure. And this biolab is just one example of the potential consequences that could happen if water stations, power plants get damaged. We do have our surgical team, and our surgical team is working in Ndosha Hospital in Goma together with the Congolese staff at the hospital, and they have been working 24/7 for many days. The hospital ran out of beds. They're using parking lot as a triage, as they're receiving a lot of wounded, about half of them women and children. And also we have seen like an increase in the number of wounded children, something that we are worried very much. So these are our immediate concern.
Away from the DRC crisis, a nurse in Uganda has died of Ebola, the first recorded fatality since the last outbreak ended in 2023. The 32-year-old male nurse was an employee of Mulago Hospital, the main referrals facility in the capital, Kampala. He developed a fever and was treated at several locations in Uganda before multiple lab tests confirmed he had been suffering from Ebola. At least 44 contacts of the victim have been identified, including 30 health workers and patients at Mulago Hospital. Uganda's last outbreak, discovered in September 2022, killed at least 55 people before it was declared over in January 2023. And still to come on the program. Released Palestinian prisoners greeted by huge crowds on arrival as Israeli hostages reunite with their family. Please stay with us for details. Welcome back. Hundreds of Haitians are being forced to flee their homes following a new wave of attacks by armed groups in Kenskof. Kenskof is a hilly commune southeast of the capital with strategic significance to link west and southeast departments. The area has been destroyed following the gang's attack on the outskirts of Haiti's capital. There are burnt down vehicles and damaged property, as well as residents fleeing the area with their belongings. According to local media reports, dozens of people were killed in recent days by armed gangs. Dozens of people are also reported to be hospitalized, with many losing their properties. Recently, armed gangs managed to gain a foothold in some areas of Kenskof, including Bello and Godet, despite opposition from the military and police. In the Middle East, the third round of releases has seen the freedom of more Israeli hostages that were in Hamas captivity and Palestinians that were in Israeli prisons. A further 110 Palestinian prisoners are back home from Israeli jails as part of the Gaza ceasefire deal that began on the 19th of January. Large crowds gathered in Ramallah in the occupied West Bank to welcome those released in chaotic but joyous scenes. Many of the people have been in jail for 20 years. Some of those convicted of various serious crimes are not being allowed to return to the occupied Palestinian territories by the Israelis. They are being sent to Egypt and other neighboring countries. Well, 8 hostages held by Hamas were also released. That included 5 Thai nationals. They arrived at the Tel Aviv hospital, where the ambassador of Thailand in Israel welcomed them alongside other well-wishers.
All excited to bring her people and our people back, and we're working together very closely, and this is the hospital everyone loves and waiting here patiently for them to come. And we want them to them a big thank you so much. I'm sure that they will feel at home here.
ככל יכולתי לשקם את מירוז. שב.
More emotional scenes there of the Israelis released is 8-year-old hostage Gad Moses, who is a free man now, reuniting with his family. It's an emotional moment as he embraces his children, kissing them one after the other on the cheeks with tears in their eyes. On October 7, 2023, the father and grandfather was at a home in kibbutz with his partner, Efrat Katz, and Erat's daughter, Doron Katz Asher, and her 2 young daughters. When Hamas terrorists entered the house, Moses left the sealed room to speak with them, but was taken captive. Later in the day, another group of terrorists took Katz Asher and her children. When more tears flow as Israeli hostage Agam Berger reunites with her parents as well in Tel Aviv. The young Israeli soldier who was kidnapped on October 7, 2023, was filmed crying and hugging her siblings, and also 4 others recently freed hostages who were abducted with her. Well, celebrations continue in Tel Aviv with family and friends happy that their loved ones are coming back. Families and supporters of Israeli hostages at the Hostages Square speak of a lot of happiness as another group of hostages was released by Hamas. Supporters hold Israeli flags and placards with photos of captives reading "Welcome Home" among others as they watched footage showing the hostages on a big screen.
Agam has been in captivity for 482 days. I'm friends with some of her family members, and we're so excited that she's home. These girls over here were former female observers, the same role that Agam has, and because of that, I came to support them through supporting Agam and the other girls. All 5 observers are finally back home. There were 7 kidnapped from Nahal Oz originally. Ori Megidish was rescued from captivity alive. Noam Atziano, Zichrono Libracha, was murdered in captivity. We got 4 back on Saturday, and finally Agam is home, and all of them are now back home, and we could not be more excited.
Basically, everyone here is really excited and happy for her coming back home, not only to her family and to the country, also to us, to the Mechina. I myself have mixed feelings right now because I'm so happy that everyone they came back, but I'm still thinking about all the hostages still in Gaza, and I'm worried about them, and I'm still worried for the health of the 2 that didn't come back. Right now, I'm trying to I'm really excited and happy. I'm not showing it, but I'm trying to think about everyone else.
I felt a lot of happiness, but also I was horrified to see what way they needed to go from the car of Hamas to the car of the Red Cross. And I came here to support the families and to not be alone in this very emotional moment. Today was released 8 hostages. Gadi Moses from Kibbutz Nir Oz, Arbel Yehud from Kibbutz Nir Oz, and Agam Berger that was kidnapped from Nahal Oz, and also 5 hostages with citizenship that we don't know their names yet, but this is a very important moment.
Elsewhere in East Jerusalem, demonstrators celebrate as the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, closed down its headquarters. This comes after the Israeli government's decision to ban the operations of the agency. International staff members of the agency have left East Jerusalem as Israeli permits have expired, while local employees did not report to UNRWA offices. Israel had ordered UNRWA to evacuate all its facilities in East Jerusalem and cease its operations. The decision was conveyed in a letter sent by Israel's permanent representative to the United Nations, Danny Danon, to UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres on January 24.
We need to take it down, not yet, because we didn't bring the big knife or big folder, but next time, next day, big wrecking ball. This time and this place is going to go away. So this place is a terror place. And Jerusalem City is a place of peace. Jerusalem City is a city of only of love, of land, not terror place.
There's more from the United Nations, but away from the Middle East crisis. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is calling for bolstered UN peacebuilding efforts in response to escalating global crisis. Mr. Guterres warns our world is in trouble, stressing the urgency of addressing conflicts, geopolitical tensions, and the worsening climate emergency. He was speaking at a meeting of the UN Peacebuilding Commission in New York City, highlighting the increasing relevance of the Commission's work. He also underscores the need to confront disinformation, the proliferation of weapons and other destabilizing factors, urging international cooperation to address these challenges.
Our world is in trouble. We are spreading conflicts and widening geopolitical divisions. And we face a deepening climate crisis and widening inequalities. We are confronting the proliferation of weapons and the spread of disinformation. All of these and more makes the work of the Peacebuilding Commission more critical than ever. I want to salute the Commission for its vital advisory role to the Security Council, including in the context of UN mission transitions. I also recognize your important convening role within the UN and beyond, engaging civil society, the private sector, international and regional organizations, and financial institutions. Now we have the chance to consolidate and expand that work. The Pact for the Future charts a course to reforming international cooperation, including by prioritizing prevention, mediation, and peace building. It seeks to break silos by advancing coordination with regional organizations, developing innovative approaches and fostering the full participation of women, youth, and marginalized groups in peace processes. And fundamentally, the Pact calls for strengthening the Peacebuilding Commission. This year's review of the peacebuilding architecture offers an opportunity to further advance these efforts and strengthen the role of the PBC, namely in its relationship with the Security Council. My recent report on peace building and sustaining peace lays out concrete suggestions around the inflection points where the Commission can help catalyze national efforts.
Elsewhere now, the permanent representative of Myanmar, Kyaw Mo Tun, is appealing to the United Nations and the international community to save lives and the future of the people of his country that has been under a military coup. Mr. Mo Tun says the military coup in Myanmar will be 4 years soon, adding that every day has been a misery for the people. According to him, over 6,230 innocent civilians were brutally murdered by the military junta, over 3.5 million people displaced, almost 20 million people in need of humanitarian assistance.
In 2 days, the illegal military coup in Myanmar will reach 4 years. Last 4 years, every day is misery for the people of Myanmar. Over 6,230 innocent civilians were brutally killed by the military junta. Over 3.5 million people are displaced. Almost 20 million people are in need of humanitarian assistance. I wish to appeal again the UN and the international community to save lives and future of the people of Myanmar as follows. Reject the military junta's planned Shan election. Stop flow of weapons to the military junta. Stop flow of jet fuel and dual-use items to the military junta.
The military's violence shows no sign of abating. In total, the number of airstrikes is 25 times higher than it was in 2021 and includes attacks on civilians, schools, and medical facilities. Likewise, the use of improvised explosive devices, landmines, and shelling has been higher on average in the past year than any year since the coup. Last year, Myanmar had the highest number of people killed or injured by landmines and explosive remnants of war. We condemn these cowardly measures. They must end immediately. The current trajectory of this violence is not sustainable. The military regime must end it and engage in inclusive dialogue reflecting the will of the Myanmar people. We also need greater cooperation among all stakeholders to bring an end to the hostilities and to help the people of Myanmar forge a path towards this inclusive democratic transition. The time for Council action is overdue. The military must be held to account.
And still to come on the program. Singapore's River Hong Bao dazzles for the Year of the Snake event. Please stay with us for details. Welcome back. We're in Europe now. The man tipped to be Germany's next leader could rely on support from the far-right Alternative for Germany AfD party for the second time in a week, a move that has been widely condemned. Friedrich Merz, the leader of the conservative CDU party, may need AfD votes to pass legislation toughening immigration laws. Former Chancellor Angela Merkel has accused him of turning his back on a previous pledge not to work with AfD in the Bundestag. Mr. Merz has defended his actions as necessary and said that he had not sought for nor wanted the AfD's support. Well, it's 3 weeks until the German elections and things are heating up with the migration, a major issue on everyone's mind. The parties are jockeying for a position, and the conservative CDU party has angered many by forming an alliance many in the country say is scandalous. Let's get more on this, and joining us now is Deutsche Welle's Lars Alter from Berlin. Lars, great to see you again today. What's happened there, in the German parliament today?
Well, thanks for having me. Now, here's the gist of it. The Christian Democrats, that is the Conservative Party, it is the party of our long-term Chancellor Angela Merkel, and it is currently the opposition party with very good chances to win this upcoming election and send its candidate Friedrich Merz to the chancellery. So this party has introduced a 5-point plan to end irregular migration. It's a hot topic, not only with the election ahead, but especially since we just saw a case of migrant crime that shocked everyone in Germany and beyond. Just over a week ago, an Afghan migrant attacked a group of kindergarten kids in a park in the southern German town of Aschaffenburg with a knife, and he killed one child and a bystander as well. Now, it turned out later that this particular man had been known for violent behavior. He had been denied migrant status. He had been set to be deported, but he was still in the country, apparently unwatched and able to commit such a crime. It triggered an immediate and heated debate over immigration, and the conservatives want much stricter rules. So strict indeed that other parties weren't going along with the plan. No consensus among the large parties, so the CDU moved on its initiative with the votes of the extreme right-wing AfD party, and that had so far been a no-go. The other parties had so far agreed on a firewall between them and the AfD, and they had tried to always find enough votes for their initiatives without bringing in the AfD. And now this seems to be over. It's a move to the right that changes the dynamic as we're heading into this election.
And what exactly is in this, migration plan?
Well, so among the ideas the CDU pushes are regular border controls along all German borders. Now, one should know that we haven't had border controls for many years, as Germany is part of the Schengen area where people can freely travel without being checked. As part of any border controls, the party also wants to strictly limit the number of people admitted, which means more people will be sent away, including those seeking asylum and those who might have a humanitarian right to do so. As for those admitted to Germany, it will be harder for them, according to this 5-point plan, to bring a family with them. Also, those with a criminal record are supposed to be arrested and kept in jails, as will those who have been denied asylum. This sort of deportation arrest is obviously a reaction to this recent knife attack, with many saying that those who are denied migrant status, and especially those with mental problems or violent records, should indeed be off the street.
And how will this initiative impact migration to Germany? Will it have a direct effect?
No, for now, it will not have a direct effect. That's because what's been voted on in Parliament was not, in fact, a law, but it was an initiative stipulating that the government, and that, of course, now mostly means the newly elected government, or the government we will elect in a couple of weeks now, is asked to explore these 5 points. They will have to include a legal review, and it will even include impact from Brussels, as many of these items collide with EU laws. Besides that, yes, there could be an immediate effect on immigration afterwards, but ideally only on the acceptance or non-acceptance of migrants that aren't willing to abide by the laws. Legal migration to Germany is something the major parties do support, and they also know that we are in dire need of immigration, not least as it would support our struggling economy. Some of Germany's current economic problems have to do with a lack of skilled workers, and so many companies have been taking steps to actively recruit foreigners to work here in health services and care, in construction, agriculture, in retail, but also in highly skilled jobs in IT, in medicine. So as radical as these steps taken by the CDU party sound, and as disheartening it is that the right-wing faction of the AfD was elevated in the current debate, immigration and the rules governing it will definitely remain a major factor for Germany's well-being.
Lars, thanks again. As we close, Singaporeans have welcomed the Year of the Snake with magnificent large-scale lantern displays, vibrant performances, and a lively atmosphere for an annual event. The River Hongbao 2025, Singapore's largest annual Chinese New Year celebration, held at Gardens by the Bay, where visitors were greeted by a towering illuminated lantern of the God of Fortune. Just a glimpse of the more than 20 brilliantly lit displays at the event. River Hongbao 2025 also featured firecracker shows, sculptural exhibits, lion dances, wushu demonstrations, and live performances, including special acts from a troupe from Yunnan, China, during the opening ceremony. Throughout the celebration, which runs until February 5, attendees can enjoy fun-filled carnival games, virtual activities, online games, and contests. Other highlights at the River Hongbao are lantern riddles, carnival rides, including a two-story carousel and Viking ship, and hands-on craft activities for all ages. That was a lot of fun. That's it on the show. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Jacques Rogers.